This lesson covers some material out of Unit 3-4 using algebra. We're going to look at the content from box G here. We're going to look at how what is meant when it asks you to expand and simplify. Well, expanding in this context just means apply the distributive property, okay, which we just looked at in the last lesson. Simplify means collect the like terms. Anytime you see the word simplify, it means, write it in as few terms as possible or as simply as possible. So what we want to do when we see something like this, if it tells us to expand and simplify, is to first apply the distributive property and then collect our like terms. So let's start with the distributive property. What I see is I've got sort of two things here. I've got one polynomial in brackets, our first brackets, 3x plus 1 with the 2x out in front. And then I've got a second set of brackets with a polynomial x squared minus 5x and a 3 out front. So I'm going to expand both of these using the distributive property. So first I'm going to do 2x times 3x plus 2x times 1. To this I'm going to add what I get when I expand my next polynomial. I've got 3 times x squared, and then 3 times negative 5x. And I remember, as I'm doing this, I keep those signs with the terms. So I keep this negative sign with the 5x. I keep this 3 as a positive 3. Okay? And I just put plus signs in between everything. And the only reason I have these brackets is to keep everything nice and organized. So now I'm going to do my monomial multiplication here. 2x times 3x, going to give me 6x squared. Multiplying the coefficients, add the exponents. 2x times 1, well, that's just going to be 2x, and it stays positive. 3 times x squared, 3x squared. Okay. And then 3 times negative 5x, well, that's going to give me 3 times negative 5 is going to give me negative 15. And then I just have the x there. Okay. So now I have 6x squared plus 2x plus 3x squared minus 15x. So we've done the expanding part. Now we're going to simplify by collecting our like terms. So remember, like terms have the same base with the same exponent. So let's see, like terms we have 6x squared and 3x, both have x squared, and we have 2x and negative 15x. So as we were doing before, we'll rearrange these so that our like terms are together. Remember, keep those signs with the terms that they're in front of. So 6x squared plus 3x squared plus 2x minus 15x. And then we just need to add them up. So 6x squared plus 3x squared, remember, when you're adding or subtracting, the variable part stays the same. We just add and subtract the coefficients. So if we've got 6x squared and 3x squared, our variable part stays as x squared, and we do 6 plus 3, 9x squared. 2x minus 15x, let's see, we're still going to have an x, and then we just do 2 minus 15, negative 13. So it becomes negative 13x. And that's our final answer. Okay. Our last example here. Okay. This one's a little trickier because we've got inside our two sets of brackets, we have two trinomials with 3 terms here, but we want to do this the same way. Okay? We're going to first expand, and then we're going to simplify by collecting those like terms. So 3x times x cubed. Well, I didn't write that very nicely. Let's try this again. 3x times x cubed plus 3x times 4x plus 3x times negative 7. And then I'm just going to write my next thing down here. So I'm going to add to this negative 2x squared. Okay, keeping that sign on the negative 2 with the negative 2x squared. So it's going to be negative 2x squared times negative 3x squared plus negative 2x squared times 4x plus, again, negative 2x squared times negative 5. All right, let's do our multiplication here. 3x times x cubed, multiply the coefficients, we get 3, add the exponents here. So x to the power of 1, x to the power of 3, we get 3x to the power of 4. The next term, 3 times 4 gets us 12, x times x, 1 plus 1, so we get x squared. Our next term, 3 times negative 7 is going to give us negative 21. And then we just have the 1x. Negative 2 times negative 3 gives us positive 6. X squared and x squared. We're going to have an x. 2 plus 2 gives us 4. Negative 2 times negative 4 gives us negative 8. X squared times x. Let's see, we add the exponents. 2 plus 1 gives us x cubed. Negative 2 times negative 5 gives us positive 10. X squared and nothing, just x squared. So now let's do the simplification part, and let's look for our like terms. We've got a 3x to the power of 4, and we've got a 6x to the power of 4. We've got a 12x squared. We've got a 10x squared. And those are the only ones that match up. So those are the only ones we can add together. Now, when we're working with polynomials, what we usually try to do is we try to write the biggest exponents first and going in order from the biggest to the smallest. So our biggest one here is x to the power of 4. So I'm going to write my x to the power of 4 terms first. 3x to the power of 4 plus 6x to the power of 4. My next highest power is x cubed. So next I'm going to have my 8x cubed. Then I'm going to have my 12x squared and my 10x squared. And finally, my minus 21x. Okay. And when these ones get complicated, sometimes it helps to, just at the end of it, make sure that you've accounted for all of these terms. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terms here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 terms here. So I've taken care of all of them. So final step here, I'm going to combine the ones that are like terms, here and here. So, okay, now we're adding. So the variable part stays the same. This is still x to the power of 4, and I add my coefficients. 3 plus 6 gives me 9. There's nothing to do with my 8x cubed, so it stays the same. With my two x squared terms here, I'm going to still have x squared. 12 plus 10 gives me 22, so positive 22 x squared. And finally, I've got this negative 21x sitting around. Okay. And there's my final answer. 9x to the power of 4 minus 8x cubed plus 22x minus 21x. So that's putting together everything that we've done with the distributive property, multiplying polynomials, and adding and subtracting monomials.